Shogi, or Japan's chess, is it's a game that I very much enjoy. It's got a lot of differences from the chess that most people understand, and I think it causes it to be quite a different game. One interesting factoids is the pawns that you see here they can only move one space forward, and they also capture that one space forward, making them quite different from the traditional pawns that you'd see in Western chess. But obviously there are some more noticeable differences, such as the fact that there aren't colors. As you can see, both sides are the same color, and this is for a reason. This is not just randomly done. The reason this is if a piece, such as this pawn, were to capture this one, you'd set this pawn aside next to you, and later on a turn, you can, instead of moving a piece, place this piece anywhere on the board you feel like. So, for example, boom. Now, that's not necessarily the best of moves. In fact, it might have been more effective to put it here, although there are rules against playing pawns in the same row as a pawn that already exists. Another important thing is that when a piece it moves into the enemy's back line, or what we call it, past the line where the pawns start, it can do what's called promoting, where it flips over and it becomes a stronger piece. As you can see, this is the movement of a normal pawn, and once it promotes, it gains this movement. It's the same movement as a golden general, which is this piece right here. Now, I'm not going to go over everything about Shogi and get into the huge rules, the coolness of it too far, because this video is to explain the next series of videos that I'm going to be putting out, which are not about Shogi, but a totally different is a stretch. I'm making some videos on what I'm calling the large board Shogis that I changed to fit my style, or Shogi-X, we'll call it. The X standing for Dexterity. Here's an 11 by 11 board. Just run-of-the-mill. It's not even very nice looking, honestly. I just made it out of cardboard. I will have nicer boards moving forward, but the point of this board to show off is an 11 by 11 board is much bigger, as you can tell, especially compared to like a chessboard, which notably is this big. Now, this is also a very small board in general. Like, this is my size of my hand. The pieces on this board will be very small, and the reason for that is because the largest board is over 3 times this big. That's insane. And I don't want to spoil too much, especially to those who don't know anything about the large board shogi varieties. But I've been doing a lot of research into the large board shogis. I've always been interested in them. The fact that they are just so massive, and I feel like they would be so fun to play instead of a game of chess where you have a very limited army and it almost feels like every piece is so important. But playing with, hundreds of pieces, literally hundreds of pieces, and fighting each other and trying to, breach the back line to promote your pieces, and it just feels very interesting. A few notes I want to make is that in these versions, your pieces will be colored. For example, here's a pawn for the black or white. I don't care which way you want to note it, but here's some pawns. As you'll note, the way I've done them is that if it'll focus, I have a white lining around it, and then the actual piece itself is black. Because the point is not which color is which. The point is to show that there's a distinction between the two, so you can see. And in these larger board shogis, and this is true for all versions of shogi, anything past regular shogi, except for occasionally people talk about wa shogi having drops, you don't really play with drops. And it's because the boards get so huge that having drops, there's no way you could do it. But another thing is, with having this big a board, it would be really difficult to tell what army is what the larger you get. For example, if you're playing on a 19 by 19 board, which is like that big, by the same way this direction, which I can't even show on the camera, but you're really gonna have trouble seeing which army's which if they're all the same color. Which is, at least that's what I think, that's why I'm coloring them. Now, traditionally, they did all stay the same and they had those same just carved pieces, but I'm doing it slightly differently for my versions. Flash a picture up screen right here to show that little line underneath. That's showing what games in my little series I'm making here each piece is in. For example, and flash this on the screen as well, you'll note that it is only in the first dot, only the first dot and the last dot are filled in. That is because it is only in 2 different versions of the game. As you can kind of see from the examples I put out, you'll note that there's some detail around the pieces, and that is for the fact that when you have so many pieces, and again, I will state, there's hundreds of pieces in these games as you get bigger and bigger with these boards. So I thought it would only be fair in order to make a game like this to write the moves on the piece somehow, so that you would never have one of those moments where you're like, oh crap, I forgot what that piece moves like, because it's literally stated on the piece. I have noticed this because I have a Chu Shogi board, which is a 12 by 12 variant that I've played with one of my friends who really was into it, and we played a few times, and I just carved the pieces out of wood, and they look really cool. I don't remember if I have a picture of it yet. I gave him the board later on, but the only problem with that board is that it is it's a little difficult because you can't tell what moves you're making, and a lot of times you'll have to refer back to a list that shows their movements. And although it does add to the, I guess you could call it style, and having to memorize the pieces is part of the game, but again, with all these pieces having unique movements and a lot of them not even overlapping into other games, it made sense to me to put the piece movements on the pieces themselves. So for example, right here we've got a flying falcon, which it says its name right there, so it's pretty easy to note. You'll note that there is lines on the sides of it showing which way it moves, and a dot which also shows. And I'll just give a few examples. I'll give you these examples right here and their promotions, and then we'll move into a few other details about the large board Shogis. For example, here's a pawn, and of course when it promotes, it turns into what is called a token. Here we have a climbing monkey, which has this moveset, and upon promotion, turns into a violent stag, which simply gains one more movement in the diagonals, replacing its backward orthogonal move. Here we have a piece called the swallow's wings, which has lines here referring to the range, which means that it can move as many spaces this direction as it wants, as long as it is not opposed by another piece. For example, if this pawn was here, these would be going away. Similar to how a rook and bishop range in Western chess. Upon its promotion, it turns into, oh, what a coincidence, a rook. And so if you've ever played regular chess, you know exactly how a rook moves. I'm just going to place these here to show, but it would range in any of those directions, any orthogonal direction. Next up here we have the flying falcon, which notably moves basically like a bishop, but it can also move forward one space if it wants to. And as anybody would note, bishops are normally color bound, or they're locked to one color of the board. For example, a bishop that starts on your white square would only ever be able to reach any of the white squares on the board, and a bishop starting on the black square will only be able to reach the squares that are black. But the flying falcon does not have that condition, because it can move just one space, but that's enough to change its color. When you promote the flying falcon, it turns into the violent wind, which is a much more powerful piece. And you'll see that a lot of times, similar to how the climbing monkey had a very weak transition, only gaining one step move. Some pieces will have stronger promotions and some pieces will have weaker promotions. And I will again talk about strategies behind things such as this in further videos, but this is just an introduction to some of the pieces. Here we have a piece, the Cloud Eagle, which has a slightly weirder movement style. It might tip a few of you off to some of the strategies that were used in the creation of a lot of these pieces, but I'm not going to spoil too much right now. The idea here is that it can range forward or backward. I pointed the wrong directions, but you get the idea. It has moves to the side orthogonally, diagonally behind itself, and it can step move up to 3 spaces forward in the diagonals, which makes it a decently powerful piece in comparison to some of the other ones I've shown off so far. And it promotes to a queen, which moves in the same way that a queen from Western chess moves, which is ranging in all the orthogonals and diagonals. The final piece I'm going to show off right here, I'm also going to show off a king and a few other prominent pieces. I'll just flash them on the screen after this explanation for some sneak peeks, if you will, some of the other things. This is the Swooping Owl, which, as you'll note, has a really disgusting moveset. As you can see, it can move forward one space, but because it can move diagonally backwards, it can technically switch lanes. This makes it basically just a pawn that can switch lanes. It can't even move sideways, so anytime you want to change lanes, you have to make backwards progression with it, which makes it really bad. But upon promotion, turns into that Cloud Eagle, which we just talked about earlier, with the 3 spaces diagonally in front of it, ranging in front, and then the 2 on the sides as well. Which, as you'll note, especially in comparison to the Flying Falcon, we'll give an example, and the Climbing Monkey, kind of in this order actually. The Climbing Monkey's promotion is rubbish. You gain 1 step move. The Flying Falcon's promotion, much better. You gain ranging moves these directions and 2 step moves to the side. But the Swooping Owl's promotion, although it's technically weaker than the Flying Falcon's promotion, the Flying Falcon is easier to promote because of its ranging moves. It can get to that backline area of the enemy much easier than the Swooping Owl. But when you promote the Swooping Owl, which starts out almost as a pawn, it's almost identical to a pawn in ability. It turns into this Cloud Eagle, which arguably much better than a pawn. And so this gives a interesting variety to your pieces, where some pieces are extremely important to promote as they give you huge advantages, whereas other pieces are almost like fodder, can be ignored. Promoting them is like, I can do it if I get there, I guess. And it rewards memorization of the promotion range and things of the sort. I have here then made what I'm calling a collection of the large board shogi varieties that I find interesting enough to add to my collection. I've got 8 games here that are all going to be in a collection, and I'll explain why in a moment. But we've got Wa Shogi, which is an 11 by 11 board. We've got Chu Shogi, which is a 12 by 12. Dai Shogi, which is a 15 by 15. Tenjiku Shogi, which is a 16 by 16. Maka Dai Dai Shogi, which is a 19 by 19 board. In between here, we have one more board, which is it's very much custom made by me. So I'm calling it Koran Shogi for anybody who's interested. But after that, we have Tai Shogi, which is a 25 by 25 board. And the mother of them all, Taikyoku Shogi, 36 by 36. And you may look at this and go, that is insane. But working our way up, starting with Wa Shogi, you'll notice that things get easier really quick, especially for somebody like me who's actually, I'm making it. The more I'm making it, the more I'm realizing that it is not a crazy... It's not as crazy as it looks. It's still, I mean, 36 by 36 is huge. You literally have like 270 pieces, I believe, right? If I check quick, you have to, yeah. Each player has 402 wedge-shaped pieces, 207 types. So yeah, you're literally fighting with 400 unique like pieces on your board. But working our way slowly up, you'll understand that as you go up, you'll get the hang of things, and things will be less difficult, as I'll say it like that. And I will be explaining all of these, starting with Wa, then Chu, then Dai, then Tenjiku, then Maka, then Koran, then Tai, then Taikyoku. It is Maka Dai Dai, by the way, but I'm going to just call it Maka for convenience sake. And also, I will note that a lot of these games have what I'm calling unfortunate rules. And a lot of them also have unfortunate movement. They're not the same. Like, for example, the water buffalo in Tenjiku Shogi is not the same as the water buffalo in Taikyoku Shogi. I don't like that. I'm going to go through, and I've already started this. I could throw up these clips. I've got a ton of them, especially for Taikyoku. But I'm basically going through every piece in all the games and looking at their movements, looking at the names of them, and just fixing them so that they're all similar. So that, like, if you have the water buffalo from Taikyoku, it's the same as the water buffalo from Tenjiku. Now, some people probably aren't going to like that because they're like, you're changing the game. But, and this is where the big but comes in, these are not going to be, I'm not going to be referring to them as the regular names. From now on, this set of 8 games I'm going to be calling Shogi-X or Dextorg Shogi, whatever you want to call it. It's going to be it consists of these 8 games, and I'm going to be making them, and I'll be selling them in the same on my store as well with all the other stuff I'm selling. I don't know if anybody actually wants to buy these, but if they are interested, I will be selling them. I'm going to be making a lot of changes and overall changing up consistency's sake to some things. Another thing that I think is really interesting is that each section of this has a unique aspect to it. For example, in Wa Shogi, you get 16 unique pieces, of which you only get 1 of each, and then you have your 11 pawns. But the pawns are not the important part. That is a unique thing that only this one has, where you only get unique pieces. I think Great Whale Shogi also might technically have that, and Great Whale Shogi is also on an 11 by 11 board. But the difference between Great Whale Shogi and Wa Shogi, as far as what I could tell, is that Wa Shogi, all the pieces in Wa Shogi are in Taikyoku Shogi. And so there's a bit of an overlap there, as all the pieces in Taikyoku Shogi are most of the pieces from Wa Shogi, Chu Shogi, Dai Shogi, Tenjiku Shogi, Makadai Dai Shogi, and Tai Shogi. All of these pieces are in Taikyoku Shogi, or at least most of them. And most of the pieces from Chu Shogi are in Makadai Dai Shogi. This is just something that I find really interesting, is that the large board shogi varieties, a lot of them, as you get bigger, they don't just change all the pieces, but they add pieces to change the game up, but keep the consistent theme of a lot of them. And this is why I want to consistify all the games, at least in this series that I'm making right here, because I think it'd be really cool to be able to actually know what every single one of them does in Taikyoku by the end of it. Because you've already learned all the pieces leading up to it. And by the time you get to Taikyoku, there's only 12 or 13 different pieces that you need to remember, because you've already remembered all the pieces from behind. And I think it's an interesting way to build up and experience this game. The only other things I want to note are a few of the unfortunate rules. Like I said, I think it's really interesting that Wa Shogi is unique in the fact that you only get 1 of each piece. Chu Shogi has an interesting lion trading rule where you can't trade lions by any means. It's illegal. It's literally illegal. And I have ways to work around that because it's only in Chu Shogi. In Dai Shogi, there's no lion trading rules. There are certain special pieces like the fire demons in Tenjiku, which in later games are nerfed for some reason. I'm changing a lot of this to make it suit how I want to play the game. And basically all these games are going to have a unique aspect to them. The only game that's not going to have a super unique aspect is Taikyoku. And the reason that that's not going to have a super unique aspect is because it is a 36 by 36 board. And its unique aspect is that it is a 36 by 36 board. Anyway, so if you find anything that I just talked about interesting and you'd like to see these further explanations for these big board shogi varieties, I will be making a video for each one of these leading up. And then I might also make an extra video about Great Whale Shogi and Ko Shogi, which is another one of my favorites. Ko Shogi is actually probably my favorite large shogi board, but it doesn't fit into this aspect that I'm making currently, and that's why it's not. There are a few pieces that we'll be copying to add into it, but just just know that if you find any of this interesting, hit that subscribe button, hit the like, whatever you want. I don't care. Just know that I will be releasing more information about these in the future, and I've already gotten started. Like I showed in that example of piece movements, I've got wa shogi already made, and I have example pieces. I have all of the piece movements. I'm going to make a nice, neat list that you can look at and read and understand how each one moves based off of their little movement symbols. And there's a lot of different movement symbols. I mean, you would be surprised because you think range, step range, where do you go from there? Oh, there is a lot to get from here. And there's a lot of cool things that you'll be able to see. A lot of cool features like royal pieces, burning pieces, carnage pieces. Pieces like the lion who can't be traded but only in Chu Shogi, and I'm making a unique piece for that, which will have the exact same movements, but it'll be unique in the fact that it can't be traded with itself. There are other, and like I said, Koran Shogi, which I'm making, which Koran means chaos, I believe, as far as I can tell. I did some research into that, and I kind of want to keep these a little bit thematic in everything because there's a definite theme with all of the piece names, and I don't want to mess that up. But I will be changing a lot of the piece names to just consistify them with the rest of the games. So for example, if there's 3 pieces that all move the same, but they're called like the flying falcon, the soaring falcon, and the running falcon, I'll just pick the one that I think works the best and use that for all 3 of them across all 3 games that use them. And that's kind of how I'm going to be doing this, is basically that. Now, I'm going to also throw up some videos that I've been taking while I've been doing some of this, especially the Taikyoku part, and just throw down some more information for you guys if you find it interesting. But this is basically the end of the video. The rest of this is just filler, kind of funny stuff. You can watch me kind of go into I kind of went insane while doing part of this because it is a lot. But if you enjoyed this, please leave a like, please subscribe, and I will see you when I start talking in depth about each one of these games. Goodbye. I'm going to record this. It's decently late, but I'm just writing down every piece. This is I'm probably going to put this in like way after I've already made all the other versions and like actually put everything together. But this is, I've been laughing so hard trying to realize that this is stupid. I'm kind of going insane. It's so dumb. Why are they set up like this? Why does the donkey turn into a ceramic dove? It doesn't make any sense. Okay, whatever. I have to leave my sanity at the door or I'm gonna lose my mind doing this. Okay, so update number 2. The right over here, you see this? The old monkey, which promotes to a mountain witch. And I'm really trying to make all of these fit together just a bit. So I'm writing them all down, right? And if there's 2 that are the same, obviously I can keep the same one for Chu Shogi and for Taikyoku Shogi and for Dai Maka Shogi, whatever. If there's a consistent piece, I'll just keep it and you can use it for both versions to save pieces. And so there's the blind monkey, which turns into a mountain witch. And I believe that's from Makadai Shogi. But this one is an old monkey, and this one is a blind monkey. Is there a difference? And now I have to look up here, like through all these pieces, and see if there is an old monkey up here, because it might be in both. There might be an old monkey and a blind monkey that both promote to mountain witches, and I don't know why. And if there isn't, then are they different movements? I have to check the movements to see, like, you know, is it a different moving piece? Because if it's a different moving piece, should I change it to make them work the same, or do I just leave it the same? I mean, there's already some notation differences, like this. It's like, which one is it? I don't know, because there's not enough information about it. It's so aggravating. One more note, this legend is a joke. Nobody is gonna get this. Nobody's using this legend. It's not getting used. It's not getting used. You'll never use this. I'm gonna use it specifically to figure out how the pieces get it set up, and then I'm gonna write their full names down, because there's no way that you can memorize this legend. You can barely memorize the pieces. Update, Blind Monkey is in this game, and it turns into the Flying Stag, because of course it does. It's the next day. I'm done with all Taikyoku at least, and I gotta say, this is the next day, by the way. If it wasn't, I wouldn't have slept. I slept. I took a nice rest, and oh boy, it's making more sense. I'm gonna be honest. It's making more sense. It's still stupid. You know, it's still stupid that a turtle snake turns into a divine turtle. It doesn't make any sense. But it's starting to make more sense. And I'm starting to see the themes of the game. Now, all I need to do is go through every piece, write down their movements, and try to go through, because I'm not, this isn't going to be a regular Taikyoku Shogi I'm making, because I want this to make a little more sense for it, and I want to be able to play Taikyoku Shogi, take the same pieces and move them down to just Chu Shogi and such, and be able to just, you know, use the same pieces. And so I have to go through all the movements and make sure that they match up properly. And when they don't match up properly, I'm going to alter some names or maybe even change the movements of that game, because a lot of them are so similar it doesn't even matter. Because when you have 270 pieces per side, it's okay if one piece has an extra movement or two. So yeah, that's what my plan is, and I think I'm doing better. We'll say it like that. I'm less angry. I take back almost everything I just said. Like this is something cool here. Like they have these 4 pieces that all turn into heavenly tetrarchs, and a tetrarch is like a group of 4, which is cool. But then they have like they freaking have the leopard king, stronger than a heavenly tetrarch. What is a leopard king? I'm mad again. Hopefully the final update, but quick note, game boards like Chu Shogi, as you note, there's some empty spaces in your backline, and you can also see that it's a nice third of the board. There's a third of the board for the center, a third of the board for the enemy, and a third of the board for your area. And then your go-betweens or your other forward units will start in front or into the center of the board. The battleground area, you could call it. And it's the same for things like, well, Tai Shogi is a little bit of a bad example, but Tenjiku Shogi, again, you have these open spaces at the beginning of the board, and then you have your pieces, your go-betweens going into that center board area. Whereas this is 1/3 of the board, this is 1/3 of the board, and then this is the other third of the board. But Taikyoku Shogi is different in that regard, because as you can see here, it's a bad picture, but your section and this section, this is actually where your third of the board ends. So this is actually where the promotion zone is. It's not here, it's here. And these are not starting in the middle of the board, they're starting at the edge of your territory. So what I think I'm gonna do, and this might be a bit controversial for some people, but I'm going to move the pawns up to this spot, move the go-betweens, and I believe they're called Earth Generals right here onto this row, and I'm going to give you some more open areas in here so that you have just a bit more moving room in the actual backline. And like I said, I'm already editing some of the pieces and removing some, like I realized that the Ox General and the Horse General are exactly the same, so I'm just going to remove the Ox General, because there's no point in having, I'm not going to give you 4 horse generals instead of 2 horse generals and 2 ox generals, because, I mean, look at how many pieces you get. You're not going to miss them. And instead, I'm just going to have them in open space. That way, you just get a little more open space. And I'm not going to reorganize the pieces. I'm just going to kind of move a few of them up, keep some in the same spots, and just give you some more open spaces in your backline. So, you can be mad at me if you want, or you can say, cool. Anyway. So the center standard promotes to a front standard, but they both move the same. What is the point? There's no point in the purpose. That's so dumb. I'm changing that. I don't even care anymore. I'm changing it. It's getting late again. I'm starting to get angry again, but I've started a new kind of system where I'm going to be referencing a lot more like other versions of Shogi to fix pieces that I find wrong. I was kind of doing that already to begin with mainly Tai Shogi, but it's getting to the point where I need more information, and I want, because I'm trying to get them all to match up a little bit anyway. Things like Shogi are never going to match up properly because of the fact that they renamed every single piece in that game to make it quite different. But I'm going to try my best because I want this to be an effective game that you can play, even if nobody's ever going to play this because it is a 36 by 36 board. But I will play it. And as long as I will play it by myself, it's worth it, right? Right? It'll be worth it. Maybe. I don't know. I'm going to bed because otherwise I'm going to go insane. Update. I've gone through all of the pieces. I obviously missed a few, and I'm going to have to go back through and check through where I've missed a few because it's really hard to find where all of them are in my incredibly thick notebook where I strung together as many things as possible. But I've already gone through a bunch of pieces that I wanted to fix in specific ways while I was going through it to fix them. But I found a few things that I definitely want to fix. And I'm taking heavy inspiration, especially from Tenjiku Shogi, Tai Shogi, and Ko Shogi. Those are like three of the spaces that I really want to look at. I'm going to take a few peeks at Wa Shogi, I think it is. It's the one that they're all called birds and like forest creatures instead of what they're normally called. Like the king is called the Crane King for some reason. But I'm going to check out that. I'm going to check out some of the other ones, and then I'm going to come back to this one and all the pieces that I found a bunch of issues with, especially with trying to explain them, because there's no way anybody's memorizing all of these piece movements. So on the actual pieces themselves, in fact, over here I have the pieces that I'm going to be using. They're not the biggest. They're just basically poker chips. They're not poker chips, bingo chips. They're slightly bigger than the ones I was using for my looking at how big the board is going to be. This is a 36 by 36 board, by the way. It's my entire desk size. It's a huge board. It's probably going to look weird when I put this edited. But point is, I'm going to have the actual movements on the pieces themselves. Kind of like the picture of the piece will be right there, and it'll be like, the movements will be like stylistically combined into the piece itself, so you can see it, and its name will be emblazoned, if my video focus properly, the name will be emblazoned down underneath the piece, and then hopefully, if I have room, I don't know how much room I'm gonna have, because these aren't very big, I'm hoping I can put like a little, just like 5 or 6 dots that can be either colored or uncolored, and those dots will show what games, for example, like, if you have the gold general, it's in Chu Shogi, it's in Taikyoku Shogi, it's in Wa Shogi, Ko Shogi, it's in every single Shogi variety, so it would have all those dots filled in. But a piece like the Fire Demon is not in Chu Shogi, it's not in Tai Shogi, it's not in, actually I think it is in Tai Shogi. Point is, the Fire Demon's a rare piece, so it would only have some of the dots filled in. So each game version will have a different dot, and hopefully I can get those colors to work properly. But the point is, with this update specifically, is I'm going to go through, there's a bunch of pieces that I found really like huge issues with, especially with being able to explain their movements on a piece that easily. And also there's a few problems that I overall have with the game from a game design standpoint. And since I'm marking this as like my version, I'm going to fix the problems that I find problematic. If you don't like that, you can make your own Taikyoku Shogi